Dr. Yan. In this episode, I'm so happy to talk with my guest, Mr. Stephen Mosher, who is a very excellent and special China expert because he had so much first-hand information and experience in China since 1971. The first social scientist from America came to China, and he has witnessed a lot of cruel facts happen in China at that time because it was the beginning of China's one-child policy. So of course, later China government chased him out of China, and China government doesn't like Mosher's study because he's not the person always tell people the positive things. Instead, he revealed a lot of dark but real situation and facts happened in China, which is for CCP that is not acceptable because you should help China to promote the propaganda. That's the reason China allow you to go there. If you go there and tell people the truth, how could China keep cheating the world? How could China pretend to be your friend? And how could they turn Americans the panda huggers? However, truth always be truth, and Chinese Communist Party is sorry. And so truth always truth, and Chinese government's this kind of hypocrisy always, can be revealed. So now we know more and more Americans, especially after the pandemic, they realize China treat America as the top enemy and try all the best to kill Americans. And so it's not surprise when you heard about these bad things happened in China. And Steve Mosher just recently published a new book to tell you more and more you need to know. There are a lot of things, even though Americans start to focus on China, but it's so difficult for them to even image. And here I just want to first cite an article which is published on 30 March on New York Post. And this article attract a lot of attention, and Mosher wrote this one, and based on the contents he has written in the new book. So this article, Communist China had a good run, but the party is over. I like especially several sections when Mosher wrote inside. So Mr. Mosher said, he called all this kind of statistic data from China official government, like the young people's unemployment rate or the other economic rate, this kind of number. He said, CCP toys with statistics. The real numbers must be much, much worse. This is ironic like this conclusion because as people ask me how many Chinese died in COVID-19 in Wuhan, I said we don't know. And they said only 4,000, right, or 5,000 according to the official data. I said if you listen to CCP statistic data, then basically, you are just a kindergarten kids in their eyes because our statistic bureau, the only job is to make up data to fulfill CCP's all the propaganda and falsified narratives. Another thing in this article is, amazingly, they tell you that how Xi Jinping, when he got elected since 2012, he gradually put CCP's branches into all this civil, even little business to watch people, and we call them the government's CCP's ears and eyes. And then finally, they managed to create the crimes to frame these owners, civil owners. So slowly, these party branches, these people help the CCP government to bring these personal individuals' own wealth in their business to the government. And these business people, some of them just gone. Because why do they need, this is a word that I think I should really cite to people because Mr. Stevens said the best way to eliminate the capitalism is to eliminate the capitalists themselves. Wonderful, nailed it. And also, as people always ask me, how could China government treat their people like that? It's like Wuhan outbreak. Oh no, we don't believe China government dare to intentionally release the virus out of the lab. How come they kill their own people? And when I can tell them based on evidence, this is not just a spillover from the lab accident. The step the virus get out of the lab is intentional. So the outbreak in Wuhan was unexpected, but they didn't care. I mean, they let it go, cover up, and intentionally take the advantage of the high transmissibility of the virus and infect the whole world to cause the pandemic. People said, oh, but still, it's difficult for me to understand that how could CCP or Xi Jinping kill their own citizens? So you really need to read Mr. Mosher's work. Like in this article at the end, he cited the word from Mao Zedong. He said, as tens of millions of his countrymen were starving to death in the early 60s, Mao simply shrugged, deaths have benefits. They fertilize the ground. You really should read this new book from Mosher's work, The Devil and the Communist China. I mean, this book is now available on Amazon because he pound to pound explained a lot of things that with logics, with facts, with document to let you understand why this kind of things can happen and the similarity between Xi Jinping and Mao Zedong and why we facing such a horrible situation between almost World War III, or we should say already we have seen the unrestricted World War III launched by China against America. So, sir, now give you the time, please. Let our audience know more about your new book, what they can learn from that, and what do you think is the biggest knowledge gap for Americans if they want to understand the national security risk posed by Communist China and Xi Jinping to America? What should they know? What can they get from your book? Thank you so much.
Well, you know, I wrote the book, Dr. Yan, because people need to understand the sheer evil that we are dealing with in the person of Mao Zedong, in the person of Xi Jinping, and the evil is built into the very structure of the Chinese Communist Party, which, as I said, feeds on hate and destruction. And, you know, it is true that Americans, for a long time, have regard other people with goodwill and try to put the best interpretation on things. And of course, the Chinese Communist Party regards us, probably correctly, as innocent and naive and easily deceived. Well, the Chinese Communist Party is probably correct in that. We do try to be charitable towards others. We do try to help countries and peoples in distress, but we can be taken advantage of. And no political organization has taken advantage of America more than the Chinese Communist Party, which is the opposite of innocent and naive and easily deceived. The Chinese Communist Party is guilty of massive crimes against the people, the killing, the murder of hundreds of millions, genocide against minorities, persecution of Christians, Falun Gong members, political dissidents of all stripes, and of course, they are masters of deception. As their founder, Chairman Mao, was a master of deception. Mao admitted as a young man that he was lawless and godless, Wu Fa Wu Tian, and he meant it. Of course, he acted his entire career as on those principles of being lawless and godless. And he also said as a young man something very interesting that I think a lot of Marxists share this view. And he said, there are other people and things in the world, but they're only there for my use. In other words, instead of recognizing the innate dignity and value of other human beings, he regarded other human beings as simply there for his own use, as if he were some kind of demigod regarding people nothing more than pieces on a chessboard to be moved around, manipulated, controlled, and used. And then when they were no longer of any use, he could throw them away. What does it matter if a third of the population dies? What does it matter if people die of famine? Their bodies will fertilize the soil. What an inhuman view of your fellow human beings, your fellow Chinese, to regard them as nothing more than human compost, as human fertilizer. And the other thing about Mao, and on the deception front, which I think is certainly continued by Communist Party leaders today, is that he was a master of deceit and deception. And the odd thing is, if Mao could achieve an end by telling the truth to his subordinates, to his followers, or by lying to them to get them to do what he wanted, he preferred to lie to them. He preferred to deceive them because in deceiving them, he could count himself clever. So he never told the truth when a lie would suffice. So he was the very opposite of someone who told the truth. He gravitated naturally towards the lie. And of course, the whole communist system is built on a lie and a fantasy. And oddly enough, the Communist Party, as you know, Dr. Yen, better than I, admits that its history and its ideology is a lie. If you go back to 2013, the directive number, I think it was directive number 9 of 2013 of the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party, it says that an accurate account of the history of the Chinese Communist Party or an accurate account of the ideology of the Chinese Communist Party is a mortal danger to the continued rule of the Chinese Communist Party. Well, why would an accurate account of the ideology and history be a danger, a mortal peril to the continued rule of the Chinese Communist Party? Because the history and the ideology are both lies. They're both fabrications. The history is a fabrication, right? They cover up all the crimes of the Chinese Communist Party and claim successes that, in terms of development over the last few decades, really belong to the Chinese people. The Chinese Communist Party did not develop China in the 80s and 90s and the early years of this century. It was the hard work and enterprise of the Chinese people who developed it. The Communist Party has been hamstringing and hindering them and serving it as an obstacle the whole time. So the history is a lie, and the ideology is a complete fantasy, because we're never going to get to the point where everyone is equal. We're never going to get to the point where the government fades away. We're never going to get to the point where everyone works according to his ability and consumes according to his needs. That's all just a fantasy to deceive the masses into following lustful, power-hungry leaders like Mao Zedong and Xi Jinping. So that's why I wrote the book, The Devil and Communist China, because Americans who are naive and innocent and easily deceived need to know that Chinese Communist Party is deceiving them, is taking advantage of their naivete and their innocence to steal our intellectual property, to pour spies and saboteurs across our southern border, to send fentanyl, wage chemical warfare on American young people, killing 100,000 young people a year and addicting millions of others and destroying families, is doing all of these things, is engaging in warfare against the United States to weaken us across all domains, except the kinetic. We're not firing bullets or missiles at each other, thank God, but we're being attacked in many different ways. We're being attacked in every way that the Chinese Communist Party can imagine attacking us. Confucius Institutes on our college campuses to propagandize our young people, for example, buying favors from politicians in Washington, D.C. with money and drugs and honeypots to compromise politicians and shift American policy in China's favor. So we're under assault. We've been under assault now for a long, long time. Post-COVID, as you mentioned, Dr. Yen, I think a lot of Americans are waking up to the danger that is China. And it can't come too soon. We're running out of time. We're running out of time.
honeypots. Yeah, that's Winnie Xi's favorite. They want the honeypots to make Americans feel Xi Jinping is so sweet, CCP is so great, and anyone dare to tell the truth here show the real number of who was a witness like you. Definitely China would try the best to surprise or silence. And so it's very, difficult for people like you to spend a whole life focusing on the evil regime and try to reveal all the things. And I know that you have been suffering a lot, like from this kind of persecution from Stanford University where you studied there, and China was angry about your studies. So later, Stanford also punished you, according to them. And then also, like during the COVID-19, when you interviewed me, you were one of the earliest reporter in US who want to talk to me about the COVID-19 origin in middle 2020. And you told me that before that, your articles about the COVID-19 suspicion, the origin suspicion, the cover-up of China you observed, you analyzed, kind of also suppressed by media. So,
Yeah.
sir, now we know actually, today, yesterday, Dr. Anthony Fauci, he has lied, he has misled people, this kind of things, or announced by the Committee on Oversight and Accountability in U.S. Congress, and they said Dr. Fauci will testify at public hearing on June 3rd, and also the key takeaways from his previous transcribed interview, including that Dr. Fauci acknowledged that lab leak hypothesis is not a conspiracy theory. This comes nearly 4 years after he promoted the publication of the now infamous
Yeah.
proximal origin paper and attempts to disprove the lab leak hypothesis. And also, he admitted the mandate vaccine policy in America was promoted from his position of power at White House could increase vaccine hesitancy in the future, and other things. He had involved which seriously harmed Americans and the world public health policies and harmed the people's trust to the government, to the expert in this field. So, sir, we now still have around 5 minutes before we finish this broadcast. Would you like to talk more based on this latest update about COVID-19 as well as other things about China and their proxies there, like this kind of agents or corrupted people working for China to undermine America?
Well, it's very interesting, Dr. Yan, to me that when I began to look at the history of pandemics, and I wrote a book about it, it's called The Politically Incorrect Guide to Pandemics. I realized
I love that book. Everyone should
that
read it.
so well, thank you for that endorsement. I hope they do. But one of the points I make in the book is that the Chinese Communist Party has actually released through its actions and inactions 4 different viruses on the world. And what do I mean by that? Well, remember I remember because I got sick with it, the Asian flu in 1957 to 58 originated in China, but the Chinese Communist Party covered up the fact that there was an epidemic in China and allowed the Asian flu to spread throughout Asia and throughout the world, killing over 1 million people. It did not do the responsible thing in telling the world that there was a dangerous new virus that had jumped from animal to human, and thus millions of people died. So the same thing happened in 67, 68, and 69 with what was called the Hong Kong flu. It didn't come from Hong Kong. It
Yes.
came from Guizhou province. and again, the Chinese Communist Party hid it and allowed it to spread around the world as if to say, if we have an epidemic, we're going to use it as a bioweapon and allow it to spread around the world and weaken everybody else. We are not going to suffer and die alone. We're going to ensure that other people suffer and die. Then again, in 2002, 2003, we had SARS-1. We narrowly escaped a pandemic then, and we were saved by Canadian intelligence, which intercepted transmissions in China about a dangerous new epidemic on the loose. And we pressured Beijing for news and information, and they finally admitted, yes, we have this problem with this SARS-1 virus, and it didn't spread; it was contained. But again, that's an episode which shows you the Chinese Communist Party would have been happy to allow this dangerous virus SARS-1 to spread around the world and kill lots of people, especially Americans, and weaken us. And again, coronavirus, the same thing happened. They spread it deliberately around the world this time. So there's a long pattern of this kind of behavior on the part of the Chinese Communist Party. This lust for death and destruction, this desire to weaken the United States, which the Communist Party, from its inception, from its very beginning, has seen as its principal enemy that must be defeated. And Americans, we generally have positive feelings towards the Chinese people, and we've always wanted to help the Chinese people. And the Chinese Communist Party has taken advantage of our naivete in that regard and used it against us. And I'm very worried, Dr. Yen, I know you are too, about the upcoming World Health Organization treaty, because you and I both know that Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, the head of the World Health Organization, is a puppet of the Chinese Communist Party. And you and I both know that if the World Health Organization is given the authority to declare a pandemic and impose on the United States and other countries the same kind of restrictions on travel, on assembly, on association, on vaccination, and so forth, that we endured under COVID, that they will use that against us in the future. So we all have to be aware of the danger of that World Health Organization treaty that's under consideration, and I think is going to be finalized in the next few weeks, unless we strongly oppose it.
Thank you, sir. So, I really agree with you that WHO is deeply controlled by Chinese Communist Party, and the United Nations is the same too, and also there are many other super nations infiltrated by CCP for over decades, because that is part of their unrestricted warfare. That is one of the basic methods in this strategy. And I will also further reveal more things, because we have sources told us that how this kind of dangerous and evil things worked in WHO and this kind of supranational organizations by CCP, and how people could be killed if they try to tell truth. And I can tell you, the sources told me that it's because I reviewed the WHO cover-up since 2022, and my reports on COVID origin inspired them. And also, it's so surprised that they say I am still survive. So this is something gives them confidence and really encourage them to deliver the information to be whistleblowers like me, to want to let the world know the evil facts. And definitely we will have a lot of things to do, and a lot of things are already ongoing. And thank you, sir. So before we end off this episode, could you let our audience know where to get your new book?
Well, the new book is The Devil and Communist China. It will tell you everything you need to know to prepare for the challenge that America and the world faces from the Chinese Communist Party in the 21st century. It's available from Tan Books, the publisher, Tan, Tanbooks, Tanbooks, oneword.com. You can get it if you want an autographed copy. I'll be happy to sign one. You can get one from me at pop.org, POP.org, short for Population Research Institute. That's pop.org, POP.org.
Oh, you can get it from Amazon. I already found the link. And maybe I think in the soon future, you could see it from the bookshop in America Out Loud Network. Yes.
Yes.
And the Voice of Dr. Yen every Saturday and Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on air on America Out Loud Radio Network, as well as iHeartRadio. And later you can listen to its various apps for free, including Pandora, Spotify, and Google Podcast. Thank you, sir, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Yen.